Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jaya Shri Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare
Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Rama Krishna Hare Hare Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Ashtottara Sata Shishrimad's Divine Grace Desi Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrindi Ki Jai.
Jai.
Iskan Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai.
Jai.
प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। मना माई की जय। देवी की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। शोभा मेथा भक्त वृंद की जय। और प्रेमानंदे
हरि हरि बोल।
All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pracharani Nirvishesha Shrinyavadi Paschatya Deshatani. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahlada Ladadayine. Hiranya Kashipur Bhakshaha. Shiratam Kanakarayi. Ito Nrisingha Parato Nrisingho. Jato Yato Jamituto Nrisingha.
Yato yamitato nishinga.
Mahi Nrisingho Hridaye Nrisingho.
Mahi
Nrisinghamadin Sharanam Prapadye.
Narashinamadim sharanam prapadi.
Nrisinghamadin Sharanam Prapadye.
Narashinamadim sharanam prapadi.
Kamala Pare Natham Adbhuta Sringam Kalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringa Keshava Drita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Akara Kamala Hare Nakam Abhuta Shringa Dalita Hiranyakashipu Chanubringa Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare
Kamala Pare Natham Adbhuta Sringam Kalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringa Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Akara Kamala Hare Nakam Adbhuta Sringa Dalita Hiranyakashipu Chanubringa Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare
Nrsimha Bhagwan ki jai.
Jai
Namaste Saraswati Devi.
Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to ISKCON Philadelphia's virtual Sunday Feast program. We hope you're all doing well. Made it through the snow and are happy that you've joined us this evening. Special thanks to Vishnu Prabhu, who led us in a wonderful kirtan. I want to apologize that it seemed to be some display problems. I'm not too sure. I tried to hold the camera landscape so you could see a broader angle of the temple, but on the picture it was showing that the deities were upside down. So I had to show a different angle. We'll work on that for next week, but sorry about that. The darshan may have not have been as nice as previous weeks. Before we get to our Bhagavad Gita study, we'll do a quick darshan, a close-up for the devotees that came a little bit later, couldn't see through the view in which it was being shown. Here's a picture. His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Parama Karuna Shri Gaur Nitai ki.
Jai.
I'm just going to keep it in this view here. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki. Jai. The most beautiful lordships, Shri Shri Radha Sharat Bihari ki. Jai. So tonight, as we approach the advent of the Bhagavad Gita, which will be this coming Friday, December 25th, we will continue our study of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu Prabhu has been taking us through very systematically through the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita and the events leading up to the Bhagavad Gita in the Mahabharata. So at this point, we're going to turn things over to His Grace Vishnu Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Mukunda Krishna. Oh, looks like Ram Sham.
Seems like we have more people tonight.
Okay, neat that iPad. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Nice to see you all. We're continuing our introduction into the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, as Dronacharya said, that we're going to be celebrating the appearance of the Bhagavad Gita on Friday. And that's another famous day, which is Christmas Day. It's apparently the appearance of one of Lord Krishna's devotees. And what better way to celebrate it than to meditate and think about here the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God. So before we start today, we'll chant Jaya Radha Madhava, and you're welcome to chant along. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha
Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha
Girivaradhari
Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana
Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana
Jamuna Tira Vanachari.
Atira Vanachari
Jamuna Tira Vanachari.
Vanatira
वनचारी
जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी
जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी
जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी
जय
जय
राधा
माधव कुंज
बिहारी
बिहारी
जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जन
वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी
गोपी
जन
जन
वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
गिरिवरधारी
ब्रज जन रंजन
यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन
यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन
यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन
जमुना वनचारी
यमुना तीरा वनचारी
यमुना वनचारी
यमुना
तेरा
जय
वनचारी
राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी
जय 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 ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजक आचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री His Divine Grace AC Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada की जय।
जय
अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय।
जय
ISKCON founder आचार्य श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय।
जय
नामाचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की जय।
जय
प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय।
जय
श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय।
जय
वृंदावन धाम की जय।
जय
नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय।
जय
गंगा माई की जय।
जय
यमुना माई की जय।
जय
तुलसी देवी की जय।
जय
भक्ति देवी की जय।
जय
गौर प्रेमानंदे।
हरि हरि बोल
All glories to the assembled devotees.
हरे कृष्णा
All glories to the assembled devotees.
हरे कृष्णा
All glories to the assembled devotees.
हरे कृष्णा
All glory to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Hari Hari Bol.
हरि हरि बोल
Nama Om
कृष्ण
Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine
श्री कृष्ण
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
ओम नमो भगवते Vasudevaya.
So we're continuing to study and hear about the point that Srila Prabhupada makes in his introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. And to review that, I picked one verse from the Bhagavad Gita that we could chant today, which is in the 9th chapter, 2nd verse, which some of you might know. I don't know that. It's a very famous verse, but I thought we'd chant that and then read some of that purport, which is applicable also for this subject matter today. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam
Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam.
Pavitram Idamuttamam
Pavitram idamuttamam.
Pratyaksha Dharmyam
Pratyakshagamam dharmyam.
Susukam Kurtum Avyayam
Susruktam kartamavyayam.
Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam
Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam.
Pavitram Idamuttamam
Pavitram idamuttamam.
Pratyaksha Dharmyam
Pratyakshagamam dharmyam.
Susukam Kartum Avyayam
Susukam kartamavyayam.
Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam
Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam.
Pavitram Idam Uttamam
Pavitram idamuttamam.
Pratyaksha Dharmyam
Pratyakshagamam dharmyam.
Susukam Kartum Avyayam.
Susukam kartumavyayam.
If anybody would like to chant, they can do so now. Or you don't have the shloka on hand for you.
Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam.
Raja Vidya Raja
Guhyam.
Pavitram idamuttamam.
Pavitram Idamuttamam
Pratyakshagamam dharmyam.
Pratyaksha Dharmyam
Susukam kartumavyayam.
Susukam Kartum Avyayam. Very good. Would anyone else like to chant this verse? Yes.
Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam
Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam
Pavitram Idam Uttamam
Pavitram Idamuttamam
Pratyaksham Vagamam Dharyam
Pratyaksha Dharmyam
Sukhamam Kartum Avyayam.
Susukam Kartum Avyayam. Very good. Raja Vidya, the king of education.
King of education.
Raja Guhyam,
Raja Guhyam.
the king of confidential knowledge.
The king of confidential knowledge.
Pavitram,
Pavitram.
the purest.
Purest.
Idam,
Idam. This.
Uttamam,
Uttamam.
transcendental.
Transcendent.
Pratyaksha,
Pratyaksha.
by direct experience.
By direct experience.
Avagamam,
Avagamam.
understood.
Understood.
Dharmyam,
Dharmyam.
the principle of religion.
The principle of religion.
Susukam,
Susukam.
very happy.
Very happy.
Kartum,
Kartum.
to execute.
To execute.
Avyayam,
Avyayam.
everlasting.
Everlasting.
So there's some very interesting words here in this the Sanskrit. You know the word uttama,
Yeah, Uttam.
uttam.
Tama is
Transcendent.
darkness. Tama. Yeah.
Transcendent.
Tamasima jyoti gama. Yeah, so get out of the darkness, enter the light. So uttamam, this uttamam means beyond the darkness, transcendental, yeah. And another word in the Sanskrit word there is very nice, pratyaksha, pratyaksha.
Direct.
Aksha, you know what aksha is? Aksha is eyes. So you use your eyes to see pratyaksha, so by you can actually
Direct experience.
sense it, understand it, not just by somebody's telling you, but you directly experience it. Pratyaksha, avagamam is understood that way. And sukham is happiness, and
Very
susukam,
happy.
yes,
Very happy.
very good, very much happiness. Kartamabhiyam. And another point is the last word in the verse is avyayam. Avyayam, it's everlasting.
Everlasting.
So the translation, this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. We'll read some of the purport here. This chapter, this is the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. This chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called the King of Education because it is the essence of all doctrines and philosophies explained before. Among the principal philosophers in India are Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Jagyavalkya, Shandilya, and Vaishvanara. These are philosophers that are propounding the different Vedic darshans. And finally, there's Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedanta Sutra. So there is no dearth of knowledge in the field of philosophy or transcendental knowledge. Now, the Lord says that this 9th chapter is the king of all such knowledge, the essence of all knowledge that can be derived from the study of the Vedas and different kinds of philosophy. It is the most confidential because confidential or transcendental knowledge involves understanding the difference between the soul and the body. And the king of all confidential knowledge culminates in devotional service. Om Agyana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Katahamayam Dadati Sha Pandantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So thank you very much for attending. Srila Prabhupada, when he presents the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and the Krishna consciousness movement in general, would often describe it as being non-sectarian. And he preferred to categorize the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, which we're studying, as a science instead of a particular kind of religious faith. In his understanding and the understanding of all the exemplary professors of the Bhagavad Gita known as acharyas, the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita is not for Hindu, Muslim, exclusively for Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, Sikh, or Christian, but is really applicable to all humans, regardless of their particular faith, ethnicity, nationality, gender, age, or socioeconomic status. Much as a science is conceptualized as being non-sectarian and not a set of subjective beliefs, but a collection of objective facts. Similarly, the truths of Bhagavad Gita can be understood and embraced by all people. In Srila Prabhupada's introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, he highlights this point, and so I thought we might take a deeper look at the concept today. If you don't, yeah. So science involves an idea that there's a standard body of knowledge that applies universally across all nationalities and faiths and genders and political systems. For example, if we're talking about engineering and we want to find the required strength of a load-bearing wall, it can be determined by using some mathematical formulas, using the weight of the load, the strength of materials, etc. And the calculations to determine the requirements for building such a wall in China, around the border of Texas, or in the United States or France or Cuba, all those, it's not going to differ because it's accepted as a scientific principles. A wall for a man's home, the requirements for that wall won't be different from the requirements for the wall built in a woman's home. The same specific knowledge can be applied multinationally and is inclusive to all people and situations. So that's what we were talking about by science. This is called the spiritual science. Similarly, another important aspect of science is that it can be learned by anyone through proper guidance and training. It's not the case that a person who's born in a particular family or a particular background will automatically understand that science, but everyone who wants to learn requires a certain amount of focused training, guidance, and study. And a university, a person from any background may enroll, and if they apply themselves, attend the lectures, do the homework, they can learn the science. So, birth in a Hindu, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist family is not a prerequisite for understanding the science or a bar for understanding the science. So, science includes the notion there's a standard body of knowledge that exists relatively independent of personal belief, and it can be imbibed by any sincere student. One may believe or not believe, but the science remains accurate in its ability to explain what is true and is potent when applied. If a person puts his hand in fire, it will burn. It doesn't matter if he believes it will or not. A child will put their hand, an innocent child puts their hand in the fire and they'll get burned. A person who's visually impaired will put their hand in the fire and they'll be burned. They may not know better. Still it works. Similarly, the veracity of the wisdom in the Bhagavad Gita is not dependent on the belief of the person or the hearer being a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Christian, a Muslim, or an atheist. Furthermore, just as when the principles of a particular scientific experiment are carried out painstakingly by a researcher, the expected results will be replicated. It's not a matter of the person's belief or religion. Gold is gold. We don't say it's Christian gold or Hindu gold or Buddhist gold. That's particularly relevant in this modern age because there's so much false propaganda about what is true, isn't it? And what is real. And the people have become completely befuddled and confused. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna specifically focuses and clarifies our understanding of 5 tattvas, or truths, which we went over. I don't know if you remember them from last time. What were those 5? Anybody? First one was Ishvara, God. The nature and personality of God. Then Jiva, who we are. Then there's material nature, the cosmic manifestation, time, and not last but not least, activity.
Karma.
Yeah. So careful study and understanding of these elements together gives us a fuller understanding of the complete whole or the absolute truth. And as you know, Lord Krishna's instructions begin by giving a detailed picture of who we are, the living entity, as soul or Atma. He distinguishes the self or the spirit soul, whose symptom is consciousness, from the material body or the physical body. And Lord Krishna points out very clearly that all people, regardless of what they believe, experience changes in bodies. That verse, you know, Dehinosmin yata dehe. Kaumaram yovanam jara. Everybody, believe or not believe, Christian, Hindu, Jew, Buddhist, Sikh, it doesn't matter. It happens to everyone, and it doesn't apply only to a certain portion of the population. The change of body and death happens for everyone, and that is science. Further, Lord Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that we have no experience, or there's no evidence that life can be developed from chemicals, because life is dependent on the Atma, which is a different kind of energy than matter. It's distinct from matter. And even though some of the finest minds in the world have been working on the problem of trying to create life from matter for hundreds of years, still they're unsuccessful. And it's time they admit their failure. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita. The jayate mriyate va kadachin. Life is never created at any time because it's a different energy than matter. It's eternal. There are some aspects of the Gita's philosophy, for example, the transmigration of the soul, the reincarnation, that are hard for some people to accept. But if you think about it, even many of those who don't accept reincarnation per se have similar beliefs. For example, some say, I don't know if you've heard this before, but some say that people after death, many people after death, must become purified in purgatory before being admitted to heaven. Have you ever heard that? This is a standard belief in Catholic Christianity. So they have to, and the Orthodox view is that purgatory is really not a place, but a different condition of life. Isn't that interesting? So this is very similar to the idea, and it's not inconsistent with the idea of transmigration of the eternal soul. There's also the concept of God delineated in Bhagavad Gita. Some people have a difficult time with Krishna as God. People are unsure off the bat whether God is personal or impersonal, isn't it? But Lord Krishna very clearly addresses and clears up that dilemma by declaring in Bhagavad Gita that he is both personal and impersonal. Since everything is coming from him, the person and impersonal is both coming from him. Note, however, that if Krishna didn't at least have a personal aspect, at the very least, then you and I would be greater than God. You follow? So we are persons. So if Krishna were at least a person, we would be, we would be greater than him. For God to be the greatest of all, he must have a personal feature. So the Bhagavad Gita clarifies the issue. God is both impersonal energy and the energetic source of the energy. Energy means there is a source of generation, and that is God. And of the two, personal and impersonal, the source is primary. Think about it. Think about it. The source is primary and the energy is secondary. And according to the Bhagavad Gita, that source, that primary source, is a person, and a person with form. And for those who continue to struggle with the idea of a personal God with form, Lord Krishna clarifies further. His form is not identical to our form. Generally, when we have come across the idea, or when we think about form, we're thinking of something that's very limited in its abilities, in time and space. But Krishna says clearly in Bhagavad Gita, avajanati mam mudha manusim tanumashrita param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. People who don't understand avajanati, and they're lame-brained a little bit. They think that I have this material. They've taken a material form. He has a form, but his form is different. Thinkers get caught in this rut when thinking about form because the form in their experience is limited, weak, and temporary. They should not be fooled that all form must be so. There's the story of Dr. Frog, which you might have heard. Dr. Frog, I don't know if he was in what field he had his doctorate, but he obviously wasn't Krishna conscious, but he was living in his well, and that was his whole experience. So a frog who had been living by the ocean came and hopped into the well, and they had after some small talk, the frog that came from the ocean just told him, there's this vast body of water that's huge. And I just came from that place, and you might like to see that. And the frog in the well was a little bit nonplussed, but he said, well, how big is it compared to my well? Is it maybe twice as big? And the frog that came from outside said, no, much bigger, much bigger. Well, is it 3 times as big? Bigger, much bigger. Finally, the frog in the well tried to puff himself up as big, and then he exploded. He couldn't understand. Similarly, from our limited experience, we have this limited experience of form, but Krishna's form is not like that. Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Anantarupam. Anantarupam has different meanings, but Ananta means unlimited. So his form, Ananta, Rupam, Rupa means form. His form is unlimited. He can do everything with one part of his body that he can do with all the other parts of his body. Fully spiritual. He doesn't grow old or die as we do. So and he can be in more than one place and every place at the same time, even though he's in one place. And on this point, Lord Krishna goes further. He reminds us that it's very, very difficult for us to have love for something impersonal. An important component of love is reciprocation. And how do you reciprocate in love with something impersonal like the sky? Therefore, in the 12th chapter, Lord Krishna explains, Klesho adhikatarastesham avyaktasaktachetasam. For those who worship, who are interested in the impersonal feature of the Supreme, progress is very difficult. The Bhagavad Gita emphasizes that the most essential, lasting relationship each one of us have is our connection with God. All of our other relationships, even though they are very important, and we should not neglect them, but they are temporary. And our relationship with the Supreme Lord is eternal. Mami vangso jivaloke, jivabhuta sanatana. And that connection, how is that connection understood, appreciated, and realized? Well, that's also explained in Bhagavad Gita. Scientifically, that one must engage in service to the Supreme, service to God, and because that's the symptom of love. If a person has a family and they say they love their family, but they don't maintain the children, how can they say they love the children, love the family? What is that love? Devotional service or bhakti yoga is described by Lord Krishna as the overarching and most important function of our activity. It is our purpose of life and the most important function of dharma for everyone. All other dharmas are supported to that dharma. And in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita and elsewhere, Srila Prabhupada and other great teachers explain that the word dharma, which is often translated as being faith or religion, has the connotation within it of something that has the essential quality or aspect of a thing, which makes it what it is. For example, the dharma of sugar is what is the dharma of sugar?
To be sweet.
Yeah, it's
Sweet.
Sweet. And it could be brown sugar. It could be, confectioner sugar. It could be jaggery, but it's all
Sweet.
And if it tastes bitter, it could be another powder. It could be, salty. Salt is also a white powder, a white thing, but it's not. So it's a function of the thing without which it's no longer that thing. So it cannot be changed in the sense. So with this definition of dharma in mind, what is the dharma of you and I? Our essential, what is the crux of our essential existence? The great acharyas have isolated a feature of the essential of quality of dharma or of life is service. Every person, each one of us must serve government, family, nation, boss. And someone may say they won't have to serve anybody, but they have to serve. You have to serve your own body. So you don't like human beings, then you'll get a pet to serve. So service is the dharma of every one of us, And there are varieties of services we might do throughout the day. But so in the sense, a person who says they're following Hindu Dharma or Christian Dharma or Sikh Dharma, they're missing one important point. Why? Because all of those dharmas can be changed, whereas essential dharma, real dharma, cannot be changed. It goes along with the soul. So it could be changed by conversion, or you may change your body from this life to the next life. Actual dharma cannot be changed. So these labels do not capture the essence or crux of really what is meant by dharma. What is essential and cannot be changed throughout all those different labels is the service rendered. And Bhagavad Gita has already illustrated that the identity of the person is the soul is being eternal, never born and never dying. It's not the body. And most of those services the person engages in tend to be involving just a particular body and will change along with the changes of body. So they cannot truly be dharma, that intrinsic, unchangeable aspect of a person. So what is the service? What is the service that can match one's actual immutable identity? Where can we direct service so that it's perpetual and can last forever, eternally, like the soul? This is called Sanatan Dharma, and is precisely what Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is encouraging Arjuna, and through him, all of us, to do. With this understanding, then, all seemingly contradictory instructions in Bhagavad Gita and different religions become clear. Therefore, in the end, Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, Nimitta matram bhava savyasachin. You just become my instrument. Follow my order and follow Krishna's order for us is the essential part of Dharma. Fight because Krishna wants it done. The fighting becomes transformed from ordinary karma and is called bhakti yoga when your actions are done for Krishna's pleasure. So Bhagavad Gita thus teaches us these universal principles that apply to everyone across centuries, across cultures, and focuses on the core of religion. So, for example, the initial idea of the word Catholic, in case you didn't know, was intended to be a universal religion. Nevertheless, over time, it became identified with a certain type of Christianity. And to promote religious tolerance, Akbar the Great would bring teachers from various religious backgrounds to his court, and with the effort to come to some kind of common understanding about religion. However, in his court, these teachers just seemed to quarrel more and more. So he decided to come up with his own universal religion. Called, you know what that was called? Deen-e-Ilahi. But nobody really knows about it today. But the Bhagavad Gita gives us information about these 5 universal principles, and it was already there. It's been existing since for millions of years. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 4th chapter, Imam Vivasvate Yogam. He spoke the same science of yoga to the sun god Vivaswan millions of years ago. So it's truly an universal way of understanding the complete whole. So one should have the opportunity to study it, to understand it, and to make progress in spiritual life by focusing on the detailed understanding of Bhagavad Gita. Human life is meant for this purpose. It's not meant to struggle hard for maintaining the body. Krishna is God. He's maintaining many elephants in the jungle, as well as ants. So we'll get our needs. One has to work, but one shouldn't be overly concerned with that. One should save time to cultivate our spiritual life. As you're doing today, here, hearing this class. take time to regularly try and understand the Bhagavad Gita, taking help from a devotee like Arjun. And Krishna's message in the Bhagavad Gita is Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha. He instructs Arjun to continue to engage in doing his fighting, his duty, but at the same time, always remember him. So one should mold one's life to be in such a way that one can always and regularly remember Krishna and do some service to please Lord Krishna. Lord Chaitanya's instruction to always chant the holy name of the Lord is the same instruction as Krishna is giving in the Bhagavad Gita, to always remember him. And that instruction is non-sectarian. As Lord Chaitanya said, Nam kari bahuda nija sarva shaktis tatrarpita niyamata smaranena kala. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction upon the living beings, and therefore you have hundreds and millions of names. Krishna, Govinda, Allah, Jehovah, all those names. And in all the potency you have is you've invested in these holy names. So this process of chanting the holy names, engaging in service in that way to Krishna, will be beneficial to everyone and help one remember the Supreme Lord in their daily life, and so that at the end of this life, if we can remember Krishna at the time of death, then one can no longer have to remain within the shackles of this material world where there's birth, death, old age, and disease, but can go back to the supreme abode, back to Godhead. So I'd like just to read the last part of the introduction where Srila Prabhupada goes over, there's some verses that are from the Gita Mahatmya, and he concludes his introduction in this with these verses, which I thought are very poignant and very important. In conclusion, the Bhagavad Gita is a transcendental literature which one should read very carefully. Gita Shastramidam Punyam Yat Patet Prayatam Puman. If one properly follows the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, one can be freed from all the miseries and anxieties of life. Bhaya Shoka Varjita. One will be freed from all fears in this life, and his next life will be spiritual. Gita Dhyayana Shilasya Pranayama Parasya Cha Naiva Shanti Hipapani Purva Janmi Kritani Cha. If one reads Bhagavad Gita very sincerely and with all seriousness, then by grace of the Lord, the reactions of his past misdeeds will not act upon him. The Lord says very loudly in the last portion of Bhagavad Gita, Sarvadharman Parityajya Mam Ekang Sharanam Bhaja Ahang Tang Sarva Pape Bhyo Mokshyashyami Masucha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Thus, the Lord takes all responsibility for one who surrenders unto him, and he indemnifies, nice word, indemnifies, such a person against all reactions of sins. Then the next verse, Mala nir mochanam pumsam jalasnanam dine dine sakri gitamrita snanam sansara malanashanam. One may cleanse himself daily by taking bath in water, but if one takes a bath even once in the sacred Ganges water of Bhagavad Gita, for him the dirt of material life is altogether vanquished. Gita sugita kartavya kim anya shastra vishtara yasvayam padmanabhasya mukha padmad vinishrita. Because Bhagavad Gita is being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one need not read any other literature. One need only attentively and regularly hear and read Bhagavad Gita. In the present age, people are so absorbed in mundane activities that it is not possible to read all Vedic literature, but this is not necessary. This one book, Bhagavad Gita, will suffice because it is the essence of all Vedic literatures, and especially because it is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bharatamritasarvasam Vishnu Vaktad Vinishritam Gita Gangodakam Pitva Punar Janmana Vidyate. One who drinks the water of the Ganges attains salvation. So what to speak of one who drinks the nectar of Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita is the essential nectar of the Mahabharata, and it is spoken by Lord Krishna himself, the original Vishnu. Bhagavad Gita comes from the mouth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Ganges is said to emanate from the lotus feet of the Lord. Of course, there's no difference between the mouth and the feet of the Lord, but from an impartial study, we can appreciate that Bhagavad Gita is even more important than the water of the Ganges. Sarvopanishado Gavo, Dogdagopalanandana, Parthavatsu Shudhir Bhokta, Dugdham Gitamritam Mahat. This Gita Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita, the essence of all the Upanishads is just like a cow. And Lord Krishna, who is famous as a cowherd boy, is milking the cow. Arjuna is just like a calf. And learned scholars and pure devotees, and you, drink the nectarian milk of Bhagavad Gita. Ekam Shastram, Devaki Putra Gitam, Eko Devo Devaki Putra, Eva, Eko Mantras Tasya Namami Yani, Karma Pyekam Tasya Devasya Seva. In this present day, people are very much eager to have one scripture, one God, one religion, one occupation. Therefore, let there be one scripture only, one common scripture for the whole world, Bhagavad Gita. And let there be one God for the whole world, Krishna. Eko mantras tasya namami. And one hymn, one mantra, one prayer, the chanting of his name. Karma pyekam tasya devasya seva. And let there be one work only, the service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Prabhu, can you just explain that najayate mrete va kadachinaya bhutva?
Yeah, sure.
Please.
Jayate, it never comes into being. Jayate usually means birth. Mriyate means death. Kadachin means at any time. Jayate, mriyate, va kadachin.
Kadachinaya.
Talking about the soul, yeah. The Nayam Budva Bhavitam Bhanubhuya. Ajo means unborn.
Nitya Shashvatoy. Nitya
Nityam,
Shashvatoy.
eternal, Shasvatam, always Purano.
Purano no hanyate hanyamana.
Very old, it's very old, Purana. It's the Puranas. Hanyate hanyamane sharire. And when the body is killed, you and I don't die. We remain. So we get it, and according to our consciousness in this life, we get our next body. Something like the air. Krishna says it's like the air carrying an aroma. So the mind will take our soul to the next body. And if we're thinking through practice, bhakti yoga practice, Krishna consciousness, if one remembers Krishna at the time of death, but if you do, then you get to go to be with Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking the question.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a nice class.
I'm glad you think so. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Bhagavad Gita. Those who don't know that there will be 3 different readings of Bhagavad Gita through ISKCON Philadelphia on Friday. I think at 9:30.
Yeah.
9:15 is one English recitation. Takes about 2.5 hours. Yeah, and then at what time is the Sanskrit? 1:30 is the Sanskrit. So this is about taking bath. So we were taking bath, and we can take bath in the Ganges. We can take bath in this transcendental. 1:30 is the Sanskrit, and then again
English reading along featuring the dramatic
Hopefully it'll be very dramatic. Yeah.
reading of Feast Dec.
First chapter 1, we're having a dramatic reading. So, because in the first chapter, there's 5 different speakers. So we thought we'd
Oh.
put it together. Thank you very much. Oh, there's an announcement.
Thank you
Okay.
very much for the.
Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyo.
Kapasindhobhyo cha pasitanam bhavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, if everyone could stay on just for a little bit longer. I wanted to first thank Vishnu Prabhu for taking us through the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita. This Sunday, we have our Sunday feast is sponsored by Vishwambar Gauranga Prabhu.
Wow.
So his mother, Haribo. So his mother is going through some health difficulties. He asked for the devotee's prayer, for his mother to get a speedy recovery, and that Krishna's will, be there. So please, let's give our love to her, to Vishwambar Gauranga's mother. Let's close our eyes and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. We'll do it 3 times. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Rama
Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
And then I ask the devotees if you can stay on for a little bit longer. Tonight we have a presentation from our child protection team leader, Sheshashai Vishnu Prabhu. For those of you who do not know, this is a ISKCON initiative that all the temples become what's called a safe temple, meaning that they comply with child protection requirements and policies. So our Sheshashai Vishnu Prabhu leads up this team of devotees that oversee the implementation of child protection policies here at ISKCON of Philadelphia. And I'm very happy to say that last year, under his leadership, Philadelphia received the Safe Temple Award, full compliance for the first time. So part of that is to educate people on what it means to be a safe temple and child protection policies. So we do this, a couple times a year, but we need to do one before the end of the year. So Sheshashai Vishnu Prabhu is going to take us through that. And at this point, I'm going to hand over the host to him, and he's going to take us through it. Sheshashai Vishnu Prabhu, I see you there.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
We're happy
Great
to
to be
have
here.
you.
Am I the host now?
I'm going to spotlight you,
Uh-oh.
and everyone, this is
There we go.
Sheshashai Vishnu Prabhu. Now,
Bob.
a lot of you know him, but because we've been in COVID and we haven't seen each other so often, this is Sheshashai Vishnu Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
All right, well, thank you so much, Prabhu, for that lovely introduction. I feel like I don't have to say anything anymore. You've already accomplished my goals. Like Jordan Prabhu said, every year we offer a little bit of training for the congregation and what child abuse is, how it can be identified, and more importantly, how it can be prevented. So tonight, what I'd like to do is just go over a short presentation from the Virtual Lab School, which is one of the leaders in child abuse prevention training. There's some things that I'm going to read, and there is some videos that we're going to watch. and at the end, a short quiz, and then I can open it up for questions if anybody has any. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. Make sure that I'm sharing my audio. Okay, can everybody see the presentation? I'm going to assume yes. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So the objectives tonight, we're going to define the different types of child abuse and neglect. We're going to recognize possible signs of child abuse and neglect. Plan ways to strengthen families to prevent abuse and neglect at home. It says within the program, but this is the course was designed for child programs like Sunday schools and things like that. But a lot of the material is applicable to outside the classroom as well. And we're going to summarize some procedures to follow when abuse or neglect is suspected. So first, what is child abuse and neglect? At its most basic form, child abuse and neglect is defined under federal law. State laws vary, but everybody, the federal law is the standard. Any recent act or failure to act which results in death, serious physical or emotional harm, sexual abuse, or exploitation of a child. So child abuse is not limited to sexual abuse. There's many other forms of abuse with children. And to act or failure to act, which presents an imminent risk of serious harm to a child. So now I'm going to play this video.
Child abuse and neglect is a serious issue in early care and education. As a child development professional, you have the responsibility to know the signs and to take action. This video will help you know what to look for. What is child abuse? At its most basic form, child abuse is a recent act or failure to act which results in death, serious physical or emotional harm, sexual abuse, or exploitation. It is important to note that child abuse is not always physical action. Sometimes harm comes to a child because adults fail to stop a dangerous situation. It is also considered child abuse if the child is at risk of harm. If you hear an adult say, "I'll give you something to cry about," and then that adult shoves the child out of the room, you can assume that child is in imminent risk, and you should take action. There are several different kinds of child abuse. It is important to know, though, that a child can experience more than one kind of abuse. A child who is physically abused can be emotionally abused as well. It's important to know about the different kinds of abuse and neglect. Unfortunately, child abuse does occur in school and child care settings. Working with young children can be stressful, and sometimes even the best teachers have a bad day. This is never an excuse to harm a child, though. It is important to take care of yourself mentally and physically so that you are capable of caring for children. The most important thing teachers and caregivers can do is to understand child development and positive guidance techniques. You might suspect child abuse in your program if a child or children seem scared of a particular staff member. A staff member spends long periods of time out of sight with a child. A staff member talks negatively about a child. A child cries and does not want to come into the classroom. A family member reports that a child has extreme negative reactions when the program is mentioned. A staff member gives a child lots of special attention or holds the child unnecessarily. A staff member takes unscheduled breaks and leaves children unsupervised. It can be hard to think about yourself or your coworkers abusing children. It is important to know the signs of potential abuse. Any one of these behaviors by itself doesn't necessarily mean that a teacher is abusive. If you see a pattern of behavior or a single behavior that causes concern, it is important that you make a report. Here are behaviors that might be a red flag in your program. Yelling or screaming at children. Grabbing a child by the arm or jerking them. Forcing a child to be quiet. Insisting on obedience or respect at all times. Engaging in power struggles and being happy about winning. Standing apart from children. Watching rather than interacting. Taking an unusual or excessive interest in a child. Not allowing children to make choices. Not respecting a child's wish for privacy or touching a child that does not wish to be touched. You have an important role in preventing child abuse and neglect. First, learn the signs. Talk to coworkers and friends about symptoms of abuse and neglect. Know your community and the stressors that might put children at risk for abuse or neglect. Prevent abuse at home and in the community. Make sure all employee background checks are complete and up to date. Design your child development program for visibility. Provide parenting classes and resources for families about positive parenting and guidance techniques. You must report your suspicions of abuse and neglect. Know who to call and how to prepare for the call. Finally, consider yourself a resource to families and those around you. You can empower people to get the help that they need.
Okay, so one of the things that that video discussed, what are the signs of abuse and neglect? So every child is different. Any one behavior may not necessarily be a symptom of abuse or neglect. But if you see a pattern of behavior or multiple signs, you may have a reason to be concerned. Definitely one of the things we should take with the video is that these are no one sign in itself is an indicator. There has to, you look for a pattern. Some things are egregious, like if you see somebody actively, hitting a child or some kind of form of abuse, and obviously that is what it is and it should be reported immediately. Other things that are a little more subtle require definitely seeing if there's a pattern or, if there's a reason for concern. One incident in itself does not necessarily indicate abuse, which I think is important to know. You will need to use observation skills and your knowledge of each child. As the video described, abuse can happen at home or in your program, Sunday school. You must be prepared to look for signs of abuse in both settings. Recognizing child abuse and neglect, signs and symptoms. There's a list there. Throughout this lesson, an experienced teacher will share his experience reporting abuse and neglect. Remember, these are 3 experiences occurred at different times in different programs over a career. This is not something that you should encounter a lot. This is actually pretty rare. So this is a responder talking about an incident of reporting neglect.
The first call I ever had to make right out of the gate after finishing my education was a case of neglect. It was mostly related to dress and the weather. We had a very cold winter where I was teaching, and the clothing was inappropriate for the weather. It was more summer or springtime clothing, and we were in the dead of winter. Talking with the child and just documenting what was worn, what she said about if there were clothes, if she had a coat. Also related with whether she was having breakfast or if there was food in the house. So when I needed to make that call, I went to my administrator with the documentation that was dated, showed a pattern of what I was seeing, and she suggested that I make the call. The first case that I told you about, the neglect case, that I think ended really well. They ended up assigning both a family mentor and a social worker who then gave the mom resources so that she could get the coat and the appropriate clothes. And then they also did a family mentorship program with her where they actually went into the home and really helped her with some parenting skills, just helping her with that. And so that, that relationship with that parent was not altered in any way. I think she was thankful for the help.
So it's actually really nice to see that not every instance of abuse is a criminal one. Neglect can simply be a case of a parent or family not being able to provide, in which case families, once something like that is made aware to congregation or people who can help, families can get the help that they need, and so that the children stay in a safe condition, which I think is nice. It's important to recognize that as a congregation we should be there to help our fellow devotees and helping take care of the children. So again, not everything is a criminal abuse sort of situation. So how can I prevent child abuse and neglect? It is likely that we already have child prevention measures in place, which we do. Many newer facilities are built with vision panels, individuals can see into classrooms and things like that. Let me skip a little bit. A comprehensive child guidance policy and touch policy is also to keep you healthy. That's actually something that the child protection team of Philadelphia is working on currently, putting something like that together for us. More information about these policies are provided in another course, but for now, remember, for teachers and those working with kids, positions of authority over children, never use harsh discipline. Please never hit, spank, or do any other physical act towards a child. Isolate the children from adult sight, confine them, bind them, humiliate, or use verbal abuse. Deprive them of food or play or other components as sort of a punishment. There's a lot you can do in a classroom. Good room arrangement is design your first step. Make sure there are no blind spots in the room. You need to be able to see the children at all times. Be aware that inadequate supervision of children under your care may be neglect in certain circumstances because it may put the children in danger. It's important to maintain accountability for the children. At all times. It's important to assure the children are signed in and out of the classrooms, for accountability. Make sure that the children are only with authorized people. It's always good practice that if you don't recognize somebody, never let a child go with them. Be aware of the behaviors you heard described in the video. If you notice an adult acting strangely, act on your suspicions, use the checklist. Think about the things that were discussed in the previous video, and always keep in mind to keep children safe. So what do you do if you suspect a child is being abused or neglected? So most importantly, you have a responsibility to report a suspected case of abuse or neglect. It is not your job to identify the abuser. All you need to do is suspect abuse and allow investigators to do their jobs. Reporting requirements vary from state to state and program to program. If you suspect abuse or neglect, you can call the National Child Abuse Hotline. This is actually the first step. In any case, you don't have to approach a member of the child protection team. If you don't feel comfortable, you certainly can, and we will take care of it for you. But that number, the 800 for a child, really is the best and first thing to do. So this video will describe that procedure.
Whenever you make that call, you feel it's a very emotional thing, and you do feel anxious on a couple of different levels, because first, you don't want anything to happen to the child. You don't want them to be hurt by their family member because of a call that you made, first of all. Second of all, especially in the case of neglect, a lot of things can go into that. If there's no money for appropriate clothing or food, then it's a tough call to make, because you know that through no fault of their own, this is happening to their family. Another thing that, especially in a preschool setting or a center setting, the relationship with the family sometimes is forever altered. And you have to know that even though that's a possibility, it is something that you have to do anyway, because you have the best interest of the child at heart. And again, you don't have to know that abuse or neglect occurred beyond a shadow of a doubt. You're reporting a suspicion that you have, and as a mandated reporter, you have to do that.
So if the circumstances arise where you feel like you have to make a phone call like that, what you can expect after that call. So reporting suspected child abuse or neglect can be a stressful event for teachers, anybody really. It is important to mentally prepare yourself for what happens after the call. In most states, your report will be evaluated by Child Protective Services. If there's enough evidence to warrant an investigation, a caseworker will initiate the investigation. It's important to note there that it is not the job of the temple, the child protection team, ISKCON Child Protection Office to do these investigations. They are left to professional investigators who this is their job. This is the only thing that they do. They're qualified to do it, and they're the appropriate ones to do these kinds of investigations. We offer support to those investigations should they require it. But the investigation is definitely something that we leave to the experts and professionals. Children, families, and caregivers may be contacted and interviewed. Services will determine whether the claim is substantiated and whether the child is safe in the home. If the report of abuse involves alleged criminal acts, law enforcement will be contacted and the investigation will be conducted jointly. So if the police need to be involved, they will take care of that. I should also note that if there is an imminent danger situation, 911 is also an acceptable phone call. No, we don't want anybody to get hurt, and if we can see something happening, we should take action immediately. And sometimes 911 really is the best number to call. It is important, excuse me, it's important to prepare yourself emotionally for what follows a report. First, understand you may never learn the final outcome of your report. These things are kept confidential. You may only receive confirmation that the report is being investigated. Second, some families remove their child from the program after a report of child abuse or neglect. Both of these events are normal and can be expected. Some teachers fear that making a report may get the child into trouble and may lead to more abuse. It is often the case that you have a relationship with these families. Perhaps they are your friends or neighbors. It can be difficult to make a report when you are afraid of damaging the relationship or opening yourself up to retaliation. Remember, you've done the right thing. Do not fear what might happen next to stop you from doing what you can to protect the child. Again, because that is the most important thing, to protect the children.
The most recent call I had to make was actually a call concerning what a parent actually disclosed to me. We had noticed for some time that there were some very troubling behaviors in a child, and we had documented those. He could be very physically violent, verbally, very abusive, that type of thing. And so we had documented all of that, and then one day he had a particularly hard day. And when the parent came to pick up, the parent shared that she had given the child, the older siblings, stimulant medication for ADHD, which of course, that's something you never do. That's a controlled substance, and the sibling was much older than this child, so the dosage wouldn't have been correct, even in the event that would be something you would do, which that would never be something you would do because you would need to be under a doctor's care. So the parent actually disclosed that to me, and because I'm a legally mandated reporter, I had absolutely no choice to make the call. They had already had some reports on this family before, so they very openly asked me if I felt the child was safe in his home, and I had to answer no. I don't think he is safe in his home. They also asked if I knew if there were weapons in the home, which of course I did not know, so I would have to say, I don't know. And then they asked also for the documentation, the dates, and the pattern of behavior. Wanted to know exactly what the verbal language that the little boy was using, what that was like. And they wanted to know where he went after school that day. And I did get a letter within 45 days on that, and they did open a case there. Your emotions really play into that, because especially in that case, I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know if he would get in trouble or if we would never see him again, or if she would be very angry and come in and just read me the riot act. But I mean, when push comes to shove, it doesn't really matter if she would have come in and been really angry and abusive towards me, because, I mean, you have to report that. I mean, the kid's safety is that's your job. And but it does make you feel anxious because, you know, in some situations, in many situations, you know, the family may be pushed to the, you know, their backs against the wall. They don't have a lot of choices, and they may have just snapped, you know, and just grasped at straws to try to control the child's behavior. So you feel for them, but I mean, your utmost responsibility is to the safety of the child. And it's a hard call to make, but it is a call that you have to make.
It can be especially difficult to report suspected cases of abuse and neglect when the alleged perpetrator is one of your coworkers or one of your friends or a family that you know. You might doubt yourself or question what you saw. You might worry about how that individual or other staff members will treat you. You might be afraid of publicity or damaging the reputation of your program. You might even be discouraged from reporting by coworkers or leaders. Remember, it is your job to keep them safe and to speak for the children. Trust your instincts. If you suspect abuse and neglect, make the report. Here is another child development professional sharing their experience of inappropriate behavior.
Unfortunately, even in the best child development programs, sometimes you see something that's inappropriate and that makes you uncomfortable, staff behaviors towards children or something like that. In my very first job in a child care program, I was 19 years old, right out of school. I was a floater in a child development program. And what that meant was that I went from classroom to classroom, kind of filling in when teachers took breaks or wherever I was needed to help cover in classrooms. And one particular memory that stands out to me is I was filling in this preschool classroom during lunchtime. And there was a little boy in there who had a reputation through the whole center for being very active and spirited. And that meant that sometimes he pushed teachers' buttons and challenged some teachers. And so on this particular day, it happened to be his 5th birthday. This particular day, I was there at lunchtime, and he was, you know, doing what little kids do, especially when they're really excited and have a lot of sugar. And he was talking and laughing and kind of getting in some trouble, playing with food, doing some different things. And his teacher got really upset, kind of disproportionately upset. And there might have been a history during that day, I'm not sure. But she got upset, and what she ended up doing was basically putting him in timeout in the bathroom, in the room. This bathroom had doors. It had those kind of divided doors that you could close the bottom and the top separately. It did have a vision panel so that you could see in the bathroom, but he was isolated in this bathroom. So he was in there in timeout, and as we were supervising lunch, I noticed that the teacher took his lunch back into the break room, or the storage room where the teachers supply the closet where they keep their things. And we finished up lunch. He came out of timeout. When I went back to look to get my things because my shift ended, I noticed that she had thrown away his lunch. And I looked at the lunch chart. I made a specific emphasis on looking at the lunch chart to see what she had put, and she marked that he had eaten his lunch when I knew that he hadn't had an opportunity to eat his lunch, and when I thought she was saving it, she had really thrown it away. And so I asked her about it then, and she said not to worry about it because it was his birthday and he was going to have cake later. And that really upset me a lot. I knew that that wasn't okay. And I knew that secluding him during the entire lunch and not allowing him to have food was really not okay. But 19, floater in this program, I didn't know what to do. She was the teacher. I didn't know what to do. I left the room and I walked out to my car, and I was crying by the time I walked out the door of the program. I got to my car. I just knew that I couldn't leave that program and leave that little boy in that classroom after seeing that. I knew that I needed to say something. It made me really uncomfortable, and really, I knew that it wasn't okay. So I came back in still crying, and I luckily had a mentor in the program, a teacher who was one of the trainers as well, and was really someone I trusted and knew that I could talk to. And I went straight to her room and sat down with her and told her what I had saw and what I was feeling. And she talked to me and helped me know who I needed to talk to and what I needed to do. So I made a report, and I told the supervisor and the manager about what I had seen. And it ended up that that teacher was removed from the classroom that day. And kind of the long-term effects of that was that she was removed from her position. She was fired from the child care program. And also the child his parents ended up removing him from the program as well. So it wasn't a happy ending really for anyone from the program's perspective, but it was definitely an important thing to make a report when something feels uncomfortable to you, to your manager, or whatever the case may be. I know that for myself, I was really nervous about telling anyone. I wasn't sure what to do. I wasn't sure. I didn't know much about child development or anything about teaching, but I knew that that didn't feel right to me, and I knew that I couldn't leave it. And so you have a lot of emotions when you have that kind of experience. You don't know whether how the other teachers are going to perceive you, if they're going to want you in their room, if you're going to be kind of seen as a tattletale or a troublemaker. And that was what I was really worried about. But in the end, it's really important that you do right by the child and that you're protecting all of the children that you work with. And everybody has a really important job to do that, to keep kids safe.
Okay, so that's all of the presentation that we have. There is a couple questions I'm going to go through, and then I'll open up for any questions anybody has. I'll answer if I can. So first question, which of the following is not a way to prevent child abuse? Advertise your program's family education events about guidance and discipline, help families network with one another and build support systems, avoid talking to families about the issues that might upset them, or connect families with community resources. So actually all of these are actually good things to have, except for avoid talking to families about the issues that might upset them. It's important to talk about these things regardless of whether or not it upsets anybody, because unless we talk about these things, we don't know, and we can't help kids otherwise. So we should do all of these other things. We should talk about the issues. Second question, Johnny comes to school with stitches in the back of his head. Do you make a report about child abuse? No, the family sought medical care, therefore there's no chance abuse took place. Yes, this is a major injury, so it's our responsibility to make a report. No, the doctor who treated him would have reported it if there was a problem. Or yes, you should report suspected abuse if there's a pattern of injuries and the explanation does not seem logical. So the answer to this one is yes, you should report suspected abuse if there is a pattern of injuries and the explanation does not seem logical. These other things, whether the family sought medical care is actually almost irrelevant here. It's a major injury, so it's our responsibility to make a report. Well, not necessarily. I mean, things do happen. Children do get injured from time to time. That doesn't necessarily indicate abuse. The doctor who treated him would have reported if there were a problem. We can't rely on other people to make reports. What if they don't? You may be the only person to take the time to do this for the child. So what we're really looking for is, okay, well, there's an injury. Does it follow a pattern of injuries that don't make sense? It's, like I said, kids get hurt. The kids get hurt all the time. They find new and interesting ways to injure themselves. But sometimes we can see a pattern of injuries that don't seem, oh, well, he plays baseball and he got, okay, well, that makes sense. That seems fair. But, he's not involved in sports and whatever, and he keeps getting these injuries that don't make any sense. It raises some questions and would need to be looked into. So last, true or false, before you report child abuse and neglect, you should thoroughly investigate the situation. That is false. It's not your responsibility to investigate. We should leave the investigation to the professionals. If we see something that is suspect, if we see something that we think deserves reporting, we should do so. But the investigation should be left to legal authorities and those trained in such things. If you're uncomfortable, again, making that call, you can approach the child protection team, which would be myself, Gaur Shakti Prabhu, or Sobaradhe Prabhu. We can certainly take down any kind of statement. We can get the ball rolling, and then we turn it over to the authorities. We don't do the investigation ourselves either, like we said before. And that's it. That's the presentation. So I'll open it to any questions that anybody may have. I'll take off the share. So if you have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself. Okay. All right. So no questions. If anybody has any questions that they want to ask that they don't want to do in this forum, you can feel free to email me or any of the other members of the team. Said myself, Gaur Shakti Prabhu, Sobaradhe Prabhu. My email address is Steve. Well, it's Steve STEVE at badscotsman.com, BADSCOTSMAN.com, or you can get in touch with Dronacharya Prabhu or any one of the Sunday school teachers. They all have all of our contact info. So if there are no questions, I thank you all very much for attending and for listening to this important subject matter, though it may be uncomfortable at times. The goal is to keep the kids safe and healthy and happy. So I think we're doing a pretty good job in Philadelphia. I'd like to keep it that way. Everybody's doing amazing. We have a great congregation. We have so many amazing families and so many amazing kids, and it's wonderful to see them grow and be happy in Krishna consciousness. So again, thank you so much, and Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Sheshashai Vishnu Prabhu, for that, putting together that presentation, as well as giving us that information about child protection. Awareness is key. The more we're aware, the more these things can be prevented, and these information sessions are extremely important. So we thank you for that and your service here at ISKCON of Philadelphia.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Okay, so with that, I think we'll conclude the call for the evening, and we look forward to seeing everybody throughout the week on our morning classes at 7:50 on the same Zoom channel. And make sure, if you can, tune in on Sunday, although it is Christmas Day for those that celebrate. We'll also be holding 3 different Bhagavad Gita sessions for reading. One at 9:15 in the morning, that'll be English. There'll be a Sanskrit reading at 1:30, and then there'll be an evening Bhagavad Gita English reading starting at 5:30. So more will come out in the newsletter. Just want to get it out there. Okay. Once again, Shesha Prabhu, thank you so much. Hare Krishna devotees. Now, Shesha, I think you have to close it out. You're the host, so you can send us off.